I've been in circles with women where there's like unnecessary drama, and when you go into men's circles, it exists because
Cool-headed.
it's very cool-headed, it's very relaxed, even though we're not talking about our emotions or anything.
The reason why we feel sometimes so triggered and so overwhelmed with emotions is because there is something bigger behind this emotion that we're feeling that comes from our past. Those are usually unhealed, like unconscious past stories that we still live through to this day. And
It's the Far From Normal Bros, and we back at it again. First of all, I'm gonna need you to tell a friend, and tell a mother effing friend to follow and subscribe to your boys. We on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other podcast platforms as well. You can catch us on YouTube and TikTok. That's Far From Normal Podcast. Make sure you type that into the search engine. You'll see your boys doing their thing. You already know. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment, do what you can to support the boys because we're dropping that content. And you already know where to find us. www.farfromnormalpodcast.com. We got all our links up there. And last but not least, we on the gram. So make sure you follow that. That's at far_from_normal_podcast. Make sure we drop in episodes weekly. We got new video content coming out. And we got new guests, new interviews. We Far From Normal. That's what we do.
Yes, sir.
That's what we do.
Yes, sir.
You already know it's your boy Fuzzy Vision. I'm on the gram with 2 N's at the end of Vision. For any likes, dislikes, rebuttals, or if you want to be on the podcast, hit your boy up. Sonny, let him know the handle, baby.
You already know what it is. It's your boy Sonny Frames, and you can catch me at Sonny SONNY Frames SS at the end. Make sure when you do go on my Instagram page, check out my stories. And I usually stress my stories just because I post a lot of inspirational things that has to do with motivation, inspiration, and chasing your dreams. And let's not forget execution. Because in life, when you don't execute, things don't get done. So make sure when you are chasing your dream,
You're not that guy.
when you are chasing your dream, make sure you are executing because that's the most important thing. Now, Fuzzy, let's get him.
Right. You already know what time it is. It's the Far From Normal Podcast. And we back at it again. First of all, drop an applause for the... We got to drop an applause for all the, new listeners, old listeners, those that are just coming in, just hearing about the podcast, showing some love, showing some support. Even those that hate your boys, we still love you and we still appreciate you because guess what? You keep us going. We're Far From Normal. We don't let anything get in our way. So again, shout out to all those that been on the podcast. We appreciate y'all. All those that, benefited from the podcast, all those that got all the advice they could get from the podcast. We appreciate you for supporting and showing love. And we're going to continue to drop. Sonny, what you got on it?
I also got to thank family and friends who's been tuning in, all the interviewees that we've spoken to that have told their story, that have contributed to Far From Normal. We got to thank everybody. Again, we got to thank the haters and the lovers. Hey, everyone that listens to this podcast helps. Let's just say that much.
100%. So what we got today?
And before we even start anything, let's start off by introducing our panel member, Jariah the Wise. Let's get it. There we go. There's Jariah on the screen right there. There we go.
How you guys doing?
There we go.
How's it going, brother?
Hey, man, we good.
It's going well. Thank you.
Okay, how you feeling today, man? It's a different type of day in the city.
There you go. Yeah, it's pretty raining. But
Yeah, it's cool, eh?
It's a lot cooler.
Summer's kind of...
It's gone.
It's gone.
Dear summer. It's over for us,
Oh,
man.
man.
Winter is coming.
Living in the city, that winter comes pretty quick.
Winter
it's
is
October
coming.
already, and we're already looking at single digits. You know how it goes.
Jesus Christ.
And we got a special guest for today. We got our first lady in the studio.
Woo,
Let's
clap
jump
it
in.
up for
Clap
that.
it up. Clap it up for that. Special guest. All right. There we go. We got her on screen right there.
We got to drop a bomb for
Drop
you.
a bomb.
Got to drop there.
Look at the redhead. Look at the redhead beauty right there.
There you go.
Fire right there. Okay.
Let's get into it.
Now we just want to introduce our special guest. Special guest, could you introduce yourself really quickly? A little description. Let's get it.
Sure. So my name is Anastasia. I'm 29 years old, and I was born and raised in Russia. I moved to Canada when I was 18, and it's been about 10 years of my personal journey going on here, and there's been a lot of struggles and learning on the way. And emotional intelligence, the topic we are going to discuss today, is something I really relate because it's also been a part of my story. So I'm really excited to dive in and exchange perspectives and learn from it.
Wow.
Let's get it.
We got to give her a clap for this. I want to give her a clap just because, it's not easy to come on a podcast and, share your thoughts, right?
Exactly.
You got cameras on you. You got people interviewing you. It takes a lot of bravery and courage to do that. So I definitely need to clap it up for Anastasia for coming on. And the topic for today is, how can emotional intelligence improve your relationship with others?
Let's get back into this question. So how can emotional intelligence improve your relationships with others?
Now we're going to give it to Anastasia. She's going to take the floor on that one.
But first of all, let's get into into emotional intelligence. Sorry. When we talk about emotional intelligence, this is where I take it, at least. Emotional intelligence is understanding your own emotions and also dealing with them, whether that's through, therapy, that could be through expressing yourself certain ways. Some people have different ways how they express themselves, talking with others, just getting it out there. So you understand when you're upset, when you're sad, and there's outlets you can go to. So emotional intelligence is more so of an understanding of emotions and how to deal with others' emotions. And just pretty much it's the understanding. And you're never going to know how people are going to react or what they're actually dealing with. But I think it's having that open-mindedness when it comes to talking with others and maybe being vulnerable and opening up yourself. So
yeah, but before we begin also, I do want to touch on the emotional intelligence part and different aspects of emotional intelligence, such as enhanced empathy, right? We have that. We got improved communication. There's a bunch of stuff that there's benefits to having emotional intelligence, and that's what Anastasia is going to be talking on. She's going to be talking about building trust. She's going to be talking about conflict and resolutions, How does that work out? Strengthening personal bonds, If you have a relationship, how do you strengthen those bonds? Reduces misunderstanding. How do you fix those situations when there's a misunderstanding? So before I continue on, let me give this floor to Anastasia for her to talk on this specific topic.
Well, you guys seem to know a lot about emotional intelligence already, but we're still here for it to discuss. So emotional intelligence, yes, you're right. It is the ability to understand, to use and manage your emotions in positive ways. And there is a second part to it. So in positive ways to relieve your stress, to build effective communication, to empathize with other people, and to solve conflicts. It has an element of perception of others as well, so it's not just about understanding your own emotions. It's about effectively communicating, understanding other people. And why is it important? I think it's becoming a hot topic these days, and it's for a reason. It's important because it is such a key to unlocking the next level of relationships. Like as human, it's only natural that we are emotional. I think it's quite a unique experience. It's actually really amazing thing if you know how to manage it. Like it unlocks next levels of your relationship with yourself and others. But if you don't know how to navigate it, it can be an obstacle in relationships. So this is why you need to know how to navigate that to continue building yourself up and your life.
Okay, so speaking of that and emotional intelligence, and I definitely understand the value of emotional intelligence. So I'll never take that away from anybody. Everybody should have a certain degree of emotional intelligence. But I'm going to have to ask, for example, the problem with emotional intelligence, I believe that there should be certain degrees of emotional intelligence, because if you have too much emotional intelligence, that tends to lead to not being rational and being logical about certain decisions that you're going to make in your life and in your future. So how do you go about people that are emotionally intelligent, but where did he factor in rationality and just being logical and making those decisions when, they do use a lot of emotions? How does that work hand in hand?
Yeah, great question. So I think when you're talking about people who are too emotionally intelligent, as you refer to them, this makes me think about word reactive. So like people who are very reactive and they're not able to express their emotions in a constructive way. But this is actually a very key element to emotional intelligence. So it's not just understanding your emotions, but being able to communicate them to others. And there's an interesting element here. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper. The reason why we feel sometimes so triggered and so overwhelmed with emotions is because there is something bigger behind this emotion that we're feeling that comes from our past. Those are usually unhealed, like unconscious past stories that we still live through to this day. And this is why certain things trigger us so much, and it feels like the reaction is not proportional to the present situation. So emotional intelligence is giving yourself space to feel it through, to integrate the feeling. We can talk later about how we can do that exactly. But once you do it, it passes. And there is usually a moment of clarity that comes with it that gives you an insight on whether it's your story or how this experience played out for you. So with this moment of clarity, you're able to separate that past story and emotions that come with that past story from the present situation. And that's where you can actually come out and communicate with that person.
Okay, so I wanted to get into a question regarding emotional intelligence, because we're talking about expressing our emotions, and pretty much when you express your emotions or things you're going through, there's times where you can take advantage of people within that. So when it comes to, I think I want to talk about enabling certain people, because people go through things all the time, right? So a lot of the times, I want to wonder, like, if someone's going through something, whether it's addiction, problems in their relationship, whatever issues that they're dealing with, when does it become a point where emotional intelligence becomes a detriment to you? Because sometimes people will accuse those that people that at least try to listen to others' emotions and stuff like that, but say they're living their life wrong. Like I said, they have addictions, they're maybe cheating on their wife, they're doing all these different things, and pretty much actions that you wouldn't recommend or things that you would tell someone to go do. I guess my question is, how do you differentiate enabling someone's bad characteristics or bad traits, and when is it relevant to I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but the question I'm trying to ask is, when does it become
too much?
Yeah, when is it too much, or when do you draw the line of trying to understand someone's emotions when they're volatile? I guess that's the question.
That's a good question. So part of emotional intelligence, actually not part, it's core of it, is taking responsibility for your emotions. So you are responsible 100% for your emotions, your thoughts, and your behaviors. And when it comes to other people, there is a distinction. So emotional intelligence is all about understanding that you have a responsibility to other people to show up in certain ways, you know, with dignity, with respect, with honoring your commitment to those people, but you don't take responsibility for the emotions of those people. So you need to separate that.
Okay, so I wanted to get Jariah's thoughts on in terms of emotional intelligence. So when it comes to emotional intelligence and you know, lending an ear or lending, like, again, because sometimes to have emotional intelligence, you too have to, you know, show your emotions to the person that you want to understand so they can kind of feel comfortable and whatnot. But for yourself, when it comes to, you know, maybe opening up and that nature, how do you feel about that in terms of your own emotions? Do you only open up to a certain type of people, like family members or close friends, or is it reserved for maybe a therapist and that? What would you do in terms of rising or basically leveraging emotional intelligence in terms of
Vulnerability?
I guess vulnerability? Like, when it comes to that, how do you deal with emotional intelligence? If you're vulnerable and you have to speak to somebody or show that emotion to somebody, who would you go to?
Okay. Who do I go to? So let's just touch on the vulnerability element of emotionality. I don't mind trusting when there is someone I can actually trust. So I would say that I appreciate opening up and learning myself and learning the other individual together in that process, because it's a give and take. I need to be able to trust the individual that I am speaking with and confiding information to, and the levels are different. So some people, friends, good friends, it's like, okay, I've known you for 19 years.
Yeah.
Oh, you gonna listen today? You know what I'm saying? Right? So it doesn't really matter to me. What I mean to say is I don't really focus on, is this person gonna judge me? Because you've known me for close to 20 years.
Yeah.
You're still here, so
Yeah.
your judgments can't be that bad.
Yeah.
And then if you meet somebody that, sometimes the term people use these days, vibe. So if you meet someone with the energy of this person just gets it, this person gets it, naturally learning that person, you can kind of gauge to what degree you can give them information. So I don't mind being vulnerable. Of course, you have those that are close to your chest that you've known from origins, such as your parents, where it's like, okay, you guys birthed me. You better hear this. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I see it in that regard.
Okay, that's a good thing. Do you got anything to say, Sonny, in terms of questions? I think the thing of emotional intelligence that people don't understand is that it's easy to have emotional intelligence with those that don't have that many issues to deal with, right?
Good point.
It's definitely easier for you to have understanding over small problems. But when it comes to the bigger problems, a lot of people have the trust issues, right?
Yes.
Just like you're talking about trust. So I want you to get in on that, Sonny.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about just misinterpreting certain emotions, where people that do have, let's say they do have emotional intelligence, and the person that they're dealing with, the person that they're dealing with doesn't have emotional intelligence, there can be misinterpretation of what messages that are coming out, and then that could still create a conflict, even when a conflict it wasn't their intention to start a conflict, because they were trying to read your emotions, but they read them wrong, and now there's a whole situation. So on the stage, I want to ask, so if a person is emotionally intelligent, right, and they've just studied just that aspect of, you know, the human being and that element, that psyche, but they misinterpreted a message or an emotion that another human being gave them, how does a person go about dealing with a situation when the person is sporadic and irrational? How do you deal with those type of issues?
So I think first you need to take a little bit of space, so that if the other person is feeling triggered, so they can self-regulate a little bit, because it's really hard to try to see the perspective when there's so much going, you know, there's fire around. So taking a little bit of space, calming down, and, you know, coming back together. So I think a good technique is to speak from a personal perspective. So use I, and try to retell what your perception of the situation was, right? Try to retell what you perceived as the person was communicating to you, but not in a statement way, but more like, hey, so you said that, and this is how I interpreted it. So it looked to me like you were saying this and this, and I thought as a result of that is this and this. So is that what you meant? And is that correct? Or like, please correct me. Like, what did you mean exactly?
Okay.
Okay. I want to talk about honesty now.
Okay.
So with emotional intelligence, sometimes I wonder, at least, with those that have emotional intelligence, are they aware enough to know that sometimes the truth is a triggering point? So when they tell
That's a good
someone the
question,
truth about maybe themselves, like when they're talking to someone and say someone's confiding in them, and they say the truth of what they perceive to be the truth, so what they see, right? So if they mention that to somebody, is it fair for them to, I'd say this, is it fair for somebody to lie or to omit the truth in order to preserve someone's emotional distress or emotional order? Because I notice some people, if you tell them the truth, even if you're emotionally intelligent, sometimes you're too emotionally intelligent for your own good. And there's different ways to deal with different people. So some people will take in what you're saying as offensive. So obviously telling the truth about someone's situation or maybe their emotion, like say someone overreacts. Say somebody's upset and angry and they threw tables and like broke a bunch of stuff. You would say, okay, you were wrong for that. Like a normal rational person would say, you're wrong for that. You should have never let your emotions get to that point. And now if that person feels like you're not on their side, or, you know, because they could justify to themselves that, you know, I broke it because this and that was said and et cetera, et cetera. And now you know, that was deep in my heart and I had an issue or my parent died or whatever the situation may be. They could have been dealing with whatever stress. But do you think that sometimes you have to be dishonest in order to, you know, maybe create a control certain people's emotions, I guess, in a certain sense? Not control, but some people, again, when you deal with them, they won't accept your honesty if it's not in their favor. So how do you deal with people like that? Because like I said, there's the emotional manipulation that even someone with emotional intelligence has to deal with. And you have to ask yourself the question, are you willing to, you know, compromise your integrity in terms of, you know, maybe lying or saying certain things that makes the person feel better rather than the actual truth? So I want to know your thoughts on that in terms of, is it good to always be honest when it comes to emotional intelligence, or do you sometimes have to play the game of tippy-toeing over certain topics?
So the short answer is you need to ask yourself what works for you and what doesn't work for you. How far are you willing to go, and when your boundary is crossed? And think, okay, how much am I willing to be there for this person without feeling like I resent them? And part of emotional intelligence is honoring yourself. And that means also not just being open and direct in your communication and understanding yourself, but also seeking other people who are the same way.
Okay.
It's not about staying in the relationship that drags you down, where the person doesn't have an intention of working on themselves. So you need to gauge that. Like, you need to maybe give it a time and talk to that person, try to communicate where you want to be and where you want your partner or your friendship, how you want it to look like, present it to them and see what they think about it. And, you know, if they have a different vision for their future, then you need to step aside for your own well-being.
Okay, I want Jiraiya to step in on that in terms of the honesty part and, you know, dealing with people that have certain issues and facing the scrutiny that comes with being honest with people. And that doesn't mean you lack emotional intelligence, but you might not be able to maybe read the room as well with certain individuals, because everyone's different. Some people you deal with a velvet glove, other people you deal with iron fist. So for you, if you have people in your circle or, you know, people that are not doing right, not living right, and you have to be honest, is this a point of emphasis for you? Do you try to always be honest with, you know, people you're dealing with, or do you switch it up when it comes to certain people that you think won't accept some of the harsh truths?
Generally speaking, people know this of me to be an assertive and blunt individual. However, especially as of recently, considering, you know, maturity and whatnot, you got to realize there's a time and place for everything. To answer your question directly, I would say honesty is the best policy, but how you present honesty should matter. So case in point, just actually recently, during the weekend, a friend of mine, he had something going on with his wife, and obviously not saying names, just bringing the situation. He had a situation going on with his wife, and he needed my assistance. I recognized immediately what wrongs he played in that circumstance.
Yeah.
But knowing he's a volatile individual, this is not the time for me to heap onto the circumstance. Even though I know he should be aware of this information. You should have seen this. This was going to lead to this, that, and the third, right? So what I try to do instead is just be a resource to him. And then I ask this important question, which I think audience members, it's a good practice, especially when you're dealing with children as well, which is you ask, are you ready? Would you like to? It's an invitation type of energy.
Okay.
Would you like to have an emotional, intelligent discussion? You need that person's vote of confidence. So they need to say yes or no. Sometimes I don't want to hear this, right?
Yeah, that's what
true.
I mean. I guess that's
true.
what I was trying to get at is exactly what you're saying, where you're presenting it, right?
Exactly.
You're I guess testing their boundaries.
Exactly.
Because I think with emotional intelligence, where I said you can sometimes be more intelligent than for your own good.
For your own
because
good, yeah.
if you don't understand that aspect of, you know, comfortability too, right? Because you can be like, oh yeah, I understand what you're going through. Let me help you, but they might not want no help from
And
you.
then exactly
100%.
to add to that, I would say, is the option there? Like, so I would, in this case, I would say, you know, when you're ready, will you be ready? You have to get this information from that individual, because if you don't, you're not going to know how to navigate with them, because you're thinking you're going to be offering important information and help and aid, and they're not. Some people are simply just not receptive. And to the point that Anastasia was saying, you sort of have to recognize you're still a you in that midst. So you got to be able to say, okay, this is getting to a place where now this is not even emotional intelligence for me. This might even spark me up to be in a negative kind of position. So you have to be able to juggle those two things, I think.
Yeah, that's a great answer, honestly. I think that's basically what you have to do when it comes to, you know, dealing with other people's emotions. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean,
100%.
you know that.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to add on to it where emotional intelligence can be a burnout. We didn't even discuss
Great
how
point.
it can be a burnout where, I mean, a lot of people always talk about, use your emotions, show more feeling and stuff of that nature. But now we have to think about people in their professions. For example, let's use a doctor, for example, that's doing surgery on a patient. Now, should they use emotions when they are opening up a person's heart? And unfortunately, not everybody gets to live after an open heart surgery. But just imagine a doctor that's emotional about every patient he deals with when he does open heart surgery or does any type of surgery that has to deal with life and death, and then having to talk to those families and explain that their child or their father or their daughter or their mother did not make it. Do you think that's good for their mental psyche? Do you think psychologically they will be okay if they used emotional intelligence in that way? Anastasia, what do you think about that?
So I'm glad you asked me this question because emotional intelligence doesn't mean to be a pushover. It doesn't mean to exhaust yourself feeling emotions. And no, it's actually really much centered around self-care and your needs. It's about the core of emotional intelligence is feeling the emotions, being able to feel the emotions and to the full spectrum. But the purpose of that is that you can develop a strong and authentic relationships with yourself. That is to know who you are and what do you need, and when you need rest, when you need to step away and just decompress, and not feeling guilty about it, not feeling ashamed about it.
So do you think that people will judge you for not helping them out when in need? Because, I mean,
Absolutely.
I also feel the same.
Absolutely.
I as much as Anastasia said that, it's more of self-care and making sure that you're okay and stepping back when it's too much and you're burnt out. I think people will judge you for that.
And even to that point, they have a tendency, and that they being these sorts of individuals, to Ahmed's point when he was saying emotional manipulation.
Yes.
Some, unfortunately, people know who's who quite quickly too, right?
Yeah.
So they'll know this member of the family, oh, this is the person in these moments, you're supposed to do X and Y.
Yes.
Yeah. You're supposed to be the more tender person, render me what I need.
Yes.
And it has this selfish energy that they can approach with.
Yes.
So they tend to be manipulative with that circumstance. And when you choose to actually have your self-care and you choose to render restraint for yourself for the sake of, in some cases, your sanity,
Yes.
Yeah. then you're the bad individual.
Exactly.
Right?
And that happens a lot in a lot of families where, when they want you to render help at a certain point in time, but maybe you're not at your best for whatever reason, but the moment you fall, even for a second, they're going to judge you for that.
And that's why Anastasia, I think she said the point of not feeling guilty about it. Right?
Yeah.
Because in the end of the day, we all have one life to live.
Yes.
Now, if I had 10 lies, 13 lies, okay, I'll render one. I'll give you one of my life and just let's see how that pans out, right? But because we only have one and time is the scarce resource, we have to be able to recognize I've done the best I can in this situation.
Yes.
In fact, this isn't a situation I caused. So,
True. Yeah, true.
Right? So,
Well, that's where the rationality has to kick
Exactly.
in, right? And you have to find what works for you in that situation. What about the emotional overload, where like your emotions are exploding in the sense that how do you control and navigate emotions that are coming at you like rapid speed? How do you get to that point where it's a sense of calmness? Because I believe when it comes to a sense of calmness, everybody has their own individual way of how they calm themselves down. And some people haven't learned actually how to calm themselves down and how to deal with their emotions. So they can be very destructive when it comes to their emotions. So how would you, I guess, what kind of advice would you give certain people when it comes to their emotions and how they would govern it when in a stressful situation? What are some recommendations that you would give, Anastasia?
I know a technique about how to integrate your emotions when they come at you in the moment. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's also very effective. It just takes you 90 seconds. So first I want to break down what emotions actually are. Essentially, emotions are, it's a cocktail of chemicals released from your brain into your nervous system in response to a thought or an external input that you just received. And so when you get this cocktail in your nervous system, it's going to react in one of three ways. So it's flight, fight, and freeze. And once you're in that state, you are going to start your judgment process about either a thought that caused it, and you can go into the loophole of like where emotions keep dragging on, and it just seems like impossible to get out. So the thing about emotions is that physiologically, emotions without judgments stay in your nervous system just for 90 seconds. So what you need to do is catch the negative emotion in the moment that it appears and stay with it. Be present, let it sink in your body, like physical body, and try to take away all the judgment and don't think about what's happening or what caused it. Just be there and remind yourself that you're safe. This too shall pass. It's just some chemicals releasing from my brain to my body. It will go away. And so this is the process of integration. So this is when you allow your emotions to get processed and get out of your nervous system. And after that, there is a usually moment of clarity that you get, that you either learn about yourself, that or about the other person, or about the situation. And you can use this moment of clarity to communicate about what happened. So this is a path to more self-awareness and enhancing your emotional intelligence.
I have a question. Does drug abuse affect that process, this exercise that you just rendered?
That's a good question.
Does it hinder it? Because what I mean, a second part question is everyone capable of doing it? I think is really what I'm asking. Is everyone actually capable of doing it, or
Yeah.
there?
So so for the drug abuse question, I won't be able to answer it. I don't have enough qualification or experience with that.
All
So
right.
I don't want to assume.
Okay.
And if we just take out that part, so your question was, is everyone able of? Yeah, so emotional healing is something everyone is able to do. So I want to give you an example about, so your physical body, think about it. So your physical body, we all know it has an ability to self-heal, right? If you cut your finger, right, it's going to heal over time. And there are things that you can do to assist your body with healing, like good rest, good nutrition, exercise. So actually your emotions and your emotional system is able to heal just like that. And this is not something we talk about, like this is not something we know, but it's very true. It's a natural process of integration if you allow it to be. And there are things that you can do to assist your emotional healing as well. And that is to learn about how it works and practicing it.
Okay. I had a question. So, because you seem to be very knowledgeable about emotional intelligence, but I noticed that, men don't really have these type of conversations. So I wanted to talk about that and the difference between, men and women when it comes to emotional intelligence, because I feel that they do say that women are more emotional than men on averages. That's a common stereotype, that women express more emotions than men, because men obviously are shamed for certain, having certain emotions like crying. You don't see grown men cry because it's something that symbolizes being soft or being very vulnerable, weak. And with women, they don't have the same criticism. So do you think that emotional intelligence, it's more easier for women to maybe get a hold of because they're more open to expressing emotions? Or do you think, because with men, we don't have these type of conversations, but with women, they do have those conversations because they deal with a lot, where the emotions and the hormones, you're up and down in terms of, today you might feel a certain way, another day you might feel differently, because going through what you go through as a woman with the development and all that different stuff, changes of the body, and also just dealing with social media and everything that comes with, and beauty standards and whatever it comes with. But why do you think in men's circles, emotional intelligence isn't preached? Why do you think that, or I guess not why do you think that, but do you think that men lack the emotional intelligence that women have? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, I think what you just described is reflective of the reality. And culture is a part of that. Like growing up as women, we feel like we have some support system around us. We are able to talk to our girlfriends, mothers, like family members, and cry if we feel like. And that's how emotions, we release it from the body. We don't store it in the body. And as men, so there are certain stigmas or certain perceptions associated with experiencing certain emotions, like crying or feeling, angry maybe. And the way the society is, it doesn't help to find the support system. But I think recently I've been seeing a trend with more men joining like brotherhood circles and, doing practices and like meditations and crying like and feeling supported with each other. And yeah.
I've never seen that yet.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then also just to add, far from normal. This is what we're doing, right? This
Right.
is what makes us, again, far from normal. We're having
Exactly.
these discussions.
Exactly.
So we are making progress in that regard.
Yes.
We are.
Yes.
But I do want to say that it's in this podcast, and people will watch this episode, and I think one of the criticisms will be that, well, it's easy for a woman to say. It's easy for a woman to be like, yeah, emotional intelligence, tell me all your problems. Like, that's typical. Like, that's not something that, people are like, oh yeah, that's a big deal. You have a mother, you confide in your mother more so than your father usually when it comes to emotional things, right? Like, you're gonna go to your mother because she's used to seeing you in a vulnerable, she's seen you when you're a baby.
Not necessarily.
Well, I'm talking, okay, let's talk about
Generally.
I'm not gonna be so specific here. So I'm gonna try and generalize for the most part, and at least leave it at the fact that, talking about a typical, or not typical, but say a standard family where the mother is the nurturing focal point and the father is the say the breadwinner, say the guy that is making more of the money in the family, so more of a traditional household historically. So typically the mother would be more nurturing to the children if that was her role, a stay-at-home mom, say for example. And again, so men would be easy. It'd be easy for a man to confide maybe into a woman, but for a man to confide in another man, that's where the tough part comes.
And to add to that, I would say, Ami, that you're totally correct. However, we are in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So I say that to say, especially if we aim to be far from normal, we have to actually start taking control and changing certain kind of stereotypes and changing certain histories. History has to deal with then. We're in the now. And I would suggest men who are listening to this, if they want to progress or continue their progress, it's okay to have a family member who's a male and have that talk. Sit down and say, hey, look, how you doing today? I'm doing well, You know why we're sitting here right now? Because I want us to build a bond where I can be emotionally intelligent with you and you can be emotionally intelligent with me. There has to be these sorts of conversations. Otherwise, we're just we even run the risk of overloading to one person if it is the mother that you're mentioning. She's got a life too.
Absolutely.
So with men, especially since one thing that I appreciate, I don't want to use the term envy. It's something that I always see when women do that I kick back and I just say, I like this, which is their ability to reassure one another and to immediately, it's almost like Lego blocks, just work with each other in ways that males, especially in some communities, will feel, friction. No, just engage, and maybe not engage with the point of selling a lot to the individual, but just engage in just a little scrimmage when it comes to, developing that bond.
Okay.
I do want to touch on what Dries just was talking about. And the only thing I find strange when it comes to women is because when they are with men, like if they're just hanging out with men, they'll say, and you ask them, how come you don't hang out with your girlfriends? Like, where's your girlfriends at? Why do you want to hang out with us? And then they tend to say, well, women are there's too much drama when it comes to women. And I've been in circles with women where there's unnecessary drama. And when you go into men's circles, that type of drama doesn't exist because
Cool-headed.
It's very cool-headed. It's very relaxed. Even though we're not talking about our emotions or anything
It is
of that
surface
nature.
level, you can
It
say.
is surface level.
yeah,
Surface
like
level
that.
relationships.
Yeah, that too. It's probably surface level. That's why not too much emotions are actually being played. And then also, it also determines on what we're doing and why we came together. Maybe we came together because we wanted to work out, right? Or maybe we wanted to, go to a specific event or a concert or something of that nature, or a club event, so there's not too much talking involved. There's not too much releasing the emotions and this is what's going on in my life and this. So it's very foreign for men to really dive deep into that emotional level.
Exactly. And that's why they should find that opportunity, because in a sense, you have to create the space. Another
Yes,
thing
you're absolutely right.
Exactly.
So how do you do it when you're older, though?
Yes,
when you've already
yes.
built in certain
this is
you built it in already, where you're hardened based off your experience. How do you now
Good point.
rewire your
Re-engineer,
brain? Yeah,
re-engineer.
re-engineer. Yes.
Right there. That's exactly what you just said. Re-engineer. So you have to say, all right, that was then, back with the history, that was then. I am hardened. Even as I'm speaking right now, I'm a pretty hardened kind of individual to some people. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I have my channel of individuals where I've taken the steps to actually say, you know what? You guys, there's something about you. I want us to develop this. This is what I want. And remember last time when we were talking, this is the thing of this time that we're in, this 21st century, this modernity that allows people to just do things without stopping to think, is you actually have to go out there and say, I want to develop this with you. It's not a crime to say I want to develop this with you.
No, 100%. Yeah,
But
you're
people,
right.
They're so nervous.
Yes.
They're so nervous.
Yes.
Because they're not used to it.
They're not used to that.
And
Coming out of this show, yeah.
some
hard.
people aren't used to doing jobs. Like someone might have a corporate white collar job and you get laid off for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You're not used to working at a brown collar or a low collar job.
Yeah.
You're gonna get used to it. You're gonna figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I might even say most people that are listening don't own Paganis or Lamborghinis.
Yeah.
You get one today,
Yeah.
you're gonna get used to it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, true.
and maybe even when I'm saying that, I'm saying, I just thought of it on the go, is there has to be a positive incentive. The two things that I just mentioned, one of them was a negative. You lost your job. You got to get used to it. Life forces you to get used to
Yes.
it.
Yep.
Then the other one has to deal with a positive reinforcement, right? Now this is an addition. So I would encourage people to see how, when speaking to another man that you trust, this can aid to my life. This is a positive. They need to start seeing it that way. I think that's a step that can be useful.
I have a question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Anastasia.
Yeah, I really like what you said just now, and
Appreciate
I just wanted to zoom in a little bit on this specific aspect of so you're saying, so you need to have a positive intention, you need to decide that's what you want and seek people like that.
Exactly.
But how do you switch from being in a certain way and following certain patterns over years to a place when you're saying, hey, now I want something different?
Okay. I'll answer like this. In some ways, I'm a pessimistic person, and I realize change is really difficult, and some people will not change. It don't matter how much you think they will. So change isn't for you. From a scriptural context, there used to be this term that my mom would say just in the house: the power of Christ compels you. So the term is compel, right? So the knowledge behind that is that the Holy Spirit is the thing that makes that change. You can't be the one. You can lead the horse to the water. You can't make it drink. So you're not the individual in charge of that.
Yep.
And I say that to answer your question in regards of creating that opportunity. You're in charge of that. You can create that opportunity. So for me, even with my brothers and my friends, I try to let people know, hey, look, we weren't given this. It's going to be awkward, but I'm here. I'm really here. And let's not judge ourselves too much for just initiating that feeling of, let's just see what this is all about. If it turns out we do a session and nothing's coming out of it, we go back to a regular manhood in terms of we're just playing a game or we were working out. So it doesn't have to be. So let's not just sit down and just look at each other. Let's begin doing something is what I might say. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Partially.
What's the other part that I didn't address?
It's kind of because for many people, they're very comfortable functioning in a mode that they have been functioning, and although they have these dysfunctional patterns and reactions and thoughts about themselves and others, that it's still easier to function that way than change. So what does have to happen for a person to actually start actualizing, like start taking an action towards a change?
Maybe looking in themselves and saying, I want X and Y. someone else has X and Y, I see other people who do this.
Yeah.
And who win with this.
Mm.
I know it's lacking in my life.
Yeah.
I have this problem, or I recognize the need to be like this. I'm going to start researching. I'm going to start, looking into. The best way I'm trying to answer the question is, you really do need the person to make that step.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
You
definitely understand what
say
Dry
that.
is
Yeah,
trying to say.
exactly.
So basically, it's just like what I said at the very beginning of the podcast: execution.
Yep.
Executing what you learned, executing, like seeing people that you would like to be like and imitating what they do. And that has to be a conscious effort from your side. Now, if you choose to watch and admire from afar but not take any actionable steps to being better, well, then that's on you. We can't help everybody. I mean, if the information's out there and the advice is out there and they tell you exactly step by step what to do, and even if they don't give you step by step, but if you can see an example, it's up to you to take the initiative to actually make something happen, because at the end of the day, it's your own life that's in jeopardy, not the person that told you that information. It's your own life. So you got to be responsible, as you were mentioning before, Anastasia. You got to be responsible for what you want to do in life. It's just like people that have come from being obese, right? And then getting into shape. Yes, it wasn't easy. Of course not. But they made a conscious decision and they said to themselves, listen, I don't want to be like this anymore. I'm tired of this life. I'm tired of huffing and puffing. I'm tired of going to the doctors and they're telling me maybe you should lose some weight. They got to a point of just being fed up.
Yeah.
And then they made the decision, you know what, I want to be something new. And then they changed.
And to
that took time.
Yeah.
To that point of emotional intelligence, as I was listening to Sonny say this, this might sound not as sympathetic, but I would even argue and present an information where it's like, you have to be self-sympathetic. You actually have to love
100%,
yourself
100%,
and be
yes.
emotionally intelligent enough to say, I think I deserve.
Yes, I deserve
I
it.
want
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I want this. Right.
Yes,
So,
that's not even self. I think that's just just having belief in yourself.
In yourself,
Yeah,
too.
that's confidence. That has
That's
to do
having
with
that confidence and
building your self-esteem.
building your self-esteem. And I do want to talk about, back to the men and why, it's tough. And with the question you asked when you said, when you're stuck in your ways, you've already been living your life a certain way, you've been dealing with certain things a certain way, and how do you just make the snap your finger and you switch it on or off or whatever it may be. See, the thing is, that's most likely not going to happen. That's just the truth of things. It's just like if you had bad habits your whole life, I mean, you've built those bad habits. It's just like if you built a good habit, it's going to remain for your whole life until you stop that good habit, right? So I guess the same thing of what would happen with a bad habit, how do you get rid of a bad habit, would kind of apply for a good habit, right? So for a bad habit, you have to stop, or it'd be the opposite, obviously. But, and what I'm saying is that a person that, grew up a certain way, didn't understand their emotions, didn't have the people around them, or people around them behave the same way as them, they won't see outside. It's just like being in a gated community and everyone plays a certain sport, or if everyone goes to a certain school or dresses a certain way, you're going to dress that way. You're not going to be eccentric. You're going to have the one out of the 100. Of course, there's always an anomaly. There's always someone that's going to be
That one black
different,
sheep.
but that's just an anomaly. So we're trying to get to the point where men can be more emotionally intelligent, and what are some steps they can go through. So for me, it's not going to be as easy as turning on a switch or just looking in the mirror and, man, I'm living wrong. Let me talk to my buddies about it. That's not going to happen, because I know as a man, that's not easy enough to do. You're sometimes so deep in your emotions, so deep in your troubles that you can't see the way out. So that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of people can't see their way out of problems or their way out of their emotional distress because they have a lot of things on their table. You got problems here, problems there. Now you're telling me to be emotionally intelligent? I'm dealing with stress. I don't have time to, check in my emotions because I have work stressing me. I have my life stressing me. I have my goals that I want to achieve, and I feel like I'm not getting any of them done. So there's so much different emotion, different aspects, different things you have to deal with. And that's hard for an individual by themselves to change or to look in the mirror and start making those adjustments. So to my point, and to the, the males listening, the men listening, and the guys, younger guys, older guys, I think the biggest thing is, finding a mentor, finding somebody that can actually give you tips that are applicable to your life. I think you have to seek out those that are strong-minded, strong-willed, and sometimes those are like, spiritual leaders. Sometimes those are, if you're religious, obviously it'd be maybe a pastor, somebody like that, somebody that's strong in your community. Sometimes you pick someone that's influential in your community that people look up to. Not to say they're the best people, but you do have to look for those that offer positivity, that offer a certain type of lifestyle that you're looking to, become a part of, especially if you want to make a change. Again, you don't look to a criminal if you don't want to be a criminal. You don't look at them because it's irrelevant. They're criminal. You don't care what they're doing, right? So you look to a leader to become one because it's relevant. You want to be able to, maybe have the confidence, express yourself the same, walk with the same, of course, it may seem stress-free that, even a leader deals with stress, but you want to walk at least a certain way and be able to deal with it. Everyone deals with stress, but
so it's mainly more of prioritization and where your priorities lie.
Exactly. But like, again, everyone deals with stress. It's just knowing how to handle it. And I think that's the biggest problem with men. And, Anastasia said it. She's, obviously you've done your research and you believe in this and you understand that's probably helped your life out, helped your relationships out. So I do just want to, speak to the men because I know in a man's world.
This is more of a concluding statement.
Yes, absolutely. Because in a man's world, it's very tough. It's very different aspects. And obviously, we go through different struggles between men and women. We all have our different struggles. But the biggest thing is to find somebody that you can, somebody you look up to, somebody that you can listen to or, that you can maybe express certain things to. And that will help, for you to be open in your group, in your circle, and even this podcast and this conversation, you watching this conversation, you're taking in, certain advice from 4 people in the room that are pretty intelligent, and we're not the smartest people in the world, but we do give advice to certain topics that apply to the normal everyday girl and the everyday woman and the normal everyday man. So that's what we do. We're far from normal, so we're preaching this for those listening. Make sure you check in with, your family members, your friends, and also yourself. Make sure you find people that, inspire you, those that offer positivity, and latch on to them if that's the change you're looking for. So that's the biggest thing. And what do you got to say on the topic, bro?
So I honestly want to hear Anastasia's final conclusion on this topic and how she felt about the topic, and what advice can you give both men and women on the topic. Drya, also, could you give your final statements right after Anastasia, and then we're going to wrap it up from there.
I'm just really, really glad that this is happening. Like we talked, change happens in the process of action. So this is what we're here for. And I love that you guys touched on the topic of male struggles and what are some things they can take how they can take an action to work towards better well-being, because I think it is such an important topic. I adding up to what you said, like finding a community, finding a group of people that you can confide in, and that where you feel like you're self-honoring, like yourself, and people also honoring your needs and your the way you are. It's so important because if you are not a part of that group, you tend to you feel
just ostracized.
Yeah,
like when
you feel like it's
like
not
outcast.
valid. You tend to follow the patterns of the group you're part of.
100%.
So find your circle.
Yes, absolutely.
Drya, any final words?
I'd say that
advice
advice.
I'd say to the men that are listening, you don't get to choose your prison, but you do get to choose whether you want to be free or not. So implementation definitely matters. Recognize that a lot of people are going through the similar struggles that you're going through, are far from you. Sometimes they're not even in the same community or in the same region, but you're not the only one dealing with what you're going through. So you're actually not alone. To the point, emphasis of finding a community It's really difficult at times, and sometimes there's no enthusiasm too because you don't see them immediately. So it's like, wow, I have to go all the way downtown, or where do I have to go? But maybe once within every 3 months, make an actual active step to trying to find that community. And the beautiful thing about social media is you get to find beautiful podcasts and great podcasts such as this,
100%.
right? So you are actually a part of communities that maybe, you know, you don't say it to you, but you are a part of this community as well, right? So tune into the community and grow from there is what I would say and suggest.
100%.
And that's what we got on today's topic. You already know it's your boy Fuzzy Vision
and Sunny Frames. Thanks for tuning in to the Far From Normal podcast, and we are out.